Chapter 63. Grazé turned left at the next corner, and before them stood Donald. He had the same type of blue gown as everyone else. Jeff was glad to see him. So glad. Donald couldn't possibly be a threat anymore, because now he had to believe Laura. It was indisputable that the other world was, in fact, a dream. And he was another adult, a powerful man who could help Jeff lead the children out of this hospital to safety. Donald's thick, hairy calves and almost all of his monster thighs were exposed from the gown being way too short for his body. His muscular feet gripped the ground as though expecting an earthquake. A bush of chest hairs poked out from the top of his taut gown. His beard and head of hair were shorter and neater in reality. He wobbled closer to them, extending his arms outward as though keeping balance. He blinked rapidly. In a raspy voice, he asked, "Water? Water? Does anyone have water?" Jeff grinned. "Is Laura coming?" He looked confused. "I'm not sure. I guess." What happened back there? From the corner of his eye, he saw Ashley dart into a room, probably for water. She was such a sweet, considerate girl. I fought. Tried to stop her. I'm sorry." He swallowed and cleared his throat. "I thought she was crazy, maybe really going to kill us." "But what happened to her?" He swallowed. "Nothing. She shot me in that dream world." He looked at Grazé. "Sorry for hurting you too, dog." The dog continued panting, looking at no one in particular. Ashley returned with a paper cup full of water, offering it to the big man. He sipped it. "Good to see you, girl." She looked down. "Laura said she would come right after me." "What happened to my dad?" asked Tina, her words strained. He swallowed more water, hard. "Shot him, too, back at your house." "He didn't make it back," Jeff said, his voice lower. "We don't know why." "You mean he's dead? For real?" Jeff nodded. Donald gulped the whole cup of water down. He crumpled the empty container in a single massive fist and threw the wad on the floor. Jeff looked at Tina. Tears trickled down her cheeks. He put his hand on her shoulder. "I'm okay," she said fiercely, a forced smile wavering. Jeff imagined she was trying to be strong, just like she had done so many times with her father. She didn't want to slow them down any more than she already had with her emotions. Yet she had every right to experience those feelings. She was a strong girl. Ashley picked up the wadded paper cup from the floor and went into a room, probably to throw away the evidence from hospital staff. Donald reached into his gown from the top, and Jeff stepped back, half expecting him to withdraw a dark blob, but all he did was scratch his chest. Jeff sighed with relief. "We should get back to Laura. Hopefully she's awake by now." The course back to her room was lost to him, though, so he asked Tina to get the dog's assistance. She did, and Grise trotted down the hall, a little more enthused than before. He was a good dog. Jeff had owned a golden retriever when he was a boy, given to him as a birthday present by his grandfather. He loved the loyalty, kindness, enduring gratitude, and unconditional acceptance dogs offered, a contrast to his father. There was something more than human about dogs. Why couldn't your average person hold those qualities? Why did so much of humanity have to be cynical, irritable, dishonest, distrustful, selfish, backstabbing, hating, and hurtful? Was it because we are in competition with one another, creating less than endearing qualities? If we weren't, would we be more like dogs? Project X was responsible for Ron assaulting Ashley. It was also responsible for Charlie's death. Both inequities would affect the girls forever. Ashley was following behind Jeff. He turned back to check on her. Her eyes were glued to the floor as she walked. Her back slumped. She had to be suffering. Shame was a common feeling for victims of sexual abuse, despite their lack of responsibility for the atrocious acts. It was common for victims to blame themselves. He could do nothing for her now. Psychotherapy was his talent, yet that practice took time, which they didn't have. Vengeful anger burned inside him, wanting to be unleashed on Ron and the other staff. He looked at Tina walking beside him and found her wiping her wet eyes with the backs of her hands. Ashley handed the 11-year-old a tissue that she must have retrieved from the bathroom when she fetched water for Donald. Tina would carry the loss of her father throughout the rest of her life, just as Jeff carried the loss of his daughter. Each birthday of Tina's would now be fatherless. The times that would have been shared with him, provided guidance during stress and conflict, providing love during hurt and confusion, providing security during loss and change, all those would be absent. She would endure her teen years without that nurturance to help her through to a stable adulthood. Years of emotionally intimate experience with the single man closest to her, a positive male role model, were gone starting today. Nothing could replace that. She wasn't even aware of the extent of loss before her. How could she be? She had not yet experienced those times to know. This lack of realization complicates mourning. It's the reason mourning cannot be done in a week, a month, or a year, because losses keep happening. Mourning had come in waves for Jeff throughout the last 4 years. He acquired fresh realizations of the losses and the depths as he developed and aged, so that he mourned anew. In fact, he found his eyes blurred even now. This originated from his thought that if Bianca had been alive today, she would surely comfort Tina as Ashley had done. Bianca had possessed an uncommon giving spirit. Ashley's self-effacement and benevolence reminded him of his daughter. Grise rounded another corner and stopped to scratch underneath a door. Jeff tried to recognize the area, but the hallways all looked the same. There were no numerals on any of the doors or landmarks in the halls. It was as though this place were built to purposely confuse patients. Apparently, just the staff could make sense of the maze. He opened the door and saw Laura still asleep on the far bed, still hooked up to the IV drip. He sighed, hope departing with that breath. He didn't know what to do without her, but more than that, he couldn't bear to leave her in this place. If he and the others escaped, she would be suspected and blamed. She was too vulnerable in the coma-like condition. Killing her would be easy. This understanding made his heart stutter. Grazé jumped on her bed, faced away from her, and began fervently digging at the mattress. As if it were dirt, he would be burying her, but all he accomplished was bunching up the sheets around her legs. "What's wrong with him?" asked Tina. He whined, jumped off the bed, and trotted out the room. Ashley called to him, and he hesitantly came. She picked him up and held him in her arms, giving him tender kisses, but he kept looking at the door. Jeff asked, "You guys saw some people in white coats the first time, right?" Tina nodded. "Besides the janitor, where did they all go? We've been running around these halls for over 2 hours with no sign of them, a security guard, a nurse's station, or a doctor." She barely nodded. "Did they leave for reinforcements?" Everyone had blank faces. He walked to a single window of the room and saw a guard smoking a cigarette at the front gate while looking down the road leading away from the complex, a pistol holstered on his right side. He didn't appear to be concerned about a breakout. To the right of the gate was a sign that was white on a barbed wire fence that Jeff hadn't noticed before. All he could make out was the word danger. "Can you read that, Tina?" He pointed. "That white sign?" "Yeah, danger, electrified fence." Escape had just become more complicated. Donald moved beside Laura's bed and looked down at her. Guilt flickered on his face, perhaps for the trouble he had caused her and her dog. If he hadn't been so distrustful and obstinate, perhaps she would be awake helping them. Obtaining information about the hospital was crucial. Jeff needed Laura. What was delaying her? How long did it take to shoot yourself? Had she ran out of bullets? Something must have happened to her after she shot Ashley. Could something in the dream ensnare her? The others seemed anxious as they looked to him for direction. He remained speechless. His wife looked at him that way after Bianca was diagnosed with leukemia. He had no answers back then either. Maybe that's why she divorced him after their daughter's death. She needed him to be stronger than the cancer that destroyed Bianca. He had tried. He didn't know what more he could have done, though he felt there must have been something more. Jeff decided to start talking now. He felt he had to do something. Talking might lead to answers. It was better than doing nothing, wasn't it? "Okay, we can't just leave Laura here. Besides, being the one who woke us up, she's a friend." "But how long should we wait?" questioned Donald. "It's 2:45 a.m. The longer we stay, the more likely we'll be caught. She was the one who wanted us to escape." "We can't leave her," Ashley asserted. "She promised me she was coming right after me." "Can one of us go back to get her?" Tina suggested. "We don't know how to get back. Sure, it might have something to do with the IVs, but that may only be part of it. Besides, it's too risky." Jeff looked out the window again. He surveyed the guardhouse. He noticed a security officer wearing an overcoat, sitting inside and watching television. The guard outside let his cigarette fall to the ground and then crushed it underneath his black boot. He turned to face the hospital, and Jeff quickly moved to the side of the window so as not to be spotted. Where had everyone else gone? The first floor? Surely the first floor didn't have anything more important than Secret Project X. Or perhaps it did. There could be a different project on each floor. Why did they need such a huge place for so few subjects? It didn't make sense unless they were running other experiments as well. He hoped that wasn't true.